In Japan, a mermaid mummy has been sitting in a temple for centuries, and no one really knows where it came from. Off the coast of Hawaii, a dive boat captain and his crew claimed they saw a mermaid swimming with dolphins, and he even snapped photos that were later confirmed to be unedited. In Zimbabwe, dam workers were so terrified of mermaids pulling people underwater that they abandoned their jobs. These are disturbing mermaid discoveries scientists can't explain. In Okayama Prefecture in Japan, there's a mysterious mummy that's been unsettling people for centuries, and that's because it's supposedly a mermaid mummy. It's about 30 centimeters long with the upper body of what looks like a human or humanoid and the lower body of a fish. It still has hair on its head, teeth, nails, and scales, and its face is frozen in what looks like this silent scream, with its hands pulled up toward its mouth. The artifact's been kept at a temple in Asakuchi where some people worship it. The temple's chief priest compared the mummy to Amabie, a mythical creature that's said to protect people from plagues. Supposedly, it also grants immortality to whoever tastes its flesh. The mummy, I mean, and I'm not sure anyone's been brave enough to try. According to an old note stored with the mummy, it was supposedly caught in a fishing net somewhere off the coast of Tosa province between 1736 and 1741. Over time, it passed through several hands before ending up at the temple. For years, the mummy was displayed in a glass case for visitors, but now it's stored safely in a fireproof box to protect it from falling apart. Just recently though, researchers from Croatia University of Science and the Arts, along with some folklore experts, started studying the mummy for the first time. They're using tests like CT scans and DNA analysis to figure out what it's actually made of. Some mermaid mummies in Japan have been proven to be crafted fakes, usually made by stitching together parts of fish and monkeys, but this one hasn't been officially confirmed yet. Hiroshi Kinoshita, who helped launch the project, says it's a chance to explore not just whether it's real, but what it means in Japanese folklore. For more than 50 years, people in Hawaii have claimed to see a mermaid swimming off the coast of Big Island, but the story's usually written off as local legends. That changed in 1998 when a dive boat captain named Jeff Leitcher said he not only saw the creature, but managed to capture it on film. Leitcher, who runs Jack's Diving Locker, was out on April 12, 1998 with 6 other divers about 20 minutes from Hawaii's Kona coast when something strange happened. I'd heard about her before, Leitcher said. Most of us who are out in these waters regularly have heard stories, but I'd never seen her until that morning. While heading out toward Kaiwi Point, a school of dolphins began swimming alongside their boat when one of the crew members suddenly started shouting and pointing at the water. I couldn't believe what I saw. There, not 10 feet from the bow, was what looked like a nude woman, Leitcher said. She had long flowing hair and one of the most beautiful faces I've ever seen. But there's no way a human being could be swimming so fast. She was keeping right up with the dolphins. Leitcher said the creature then jumped out of the water and said the entire lower half of her was, quote, covered with scales and tapered back into a huge fishtail. She jumped once more, then disappeared under the surface. According to Leitcher, all 10 people on the boat saw it as well, but that wasn't the end of it. About an hour later, while diving at the point, Leitcher said he had another close encounter. Suddenly, I felt something brush against my right leg. She shot by me like a streak of lightning, then turned and came back past me, swimming the other way. I just aimed the camera and started snapping pictures. I kept shooting as she broke the surface and swam away. These photos here were later analyzed by 3 separate photography labs, which all concluded that the images had not been altered or tampered with. I feel very lucky that I'm the one to finally prove to the world what people here have known for half a century, Leitcher said. The Kaiwi Point mermaid is real.
Off the island of Vis, off the Croatian coast, sailors have long spoken of sea girls who appear in the moonlight singing to fishermen. And in 2016, something strange happened. A group of night fishermen swore they saw 3 long-haired women sitting on coastal rocks. They were naked, appeared to shimmer in the moonlight, and vanished into the sea when approached. Initially laughed off by the public, the story gained traction when cell phone footage surfaced brief and grainy, but showing 3 glowing shapes diving in unison. Marine biologists later confirmed the video showed, quote, no known animal behavior, and that area is now unofficially off limits to small boats at night. This one isn't a legend, it's actually a scientific theory with some strange implications. The aquatic ape hypothesis suggests that a branch of human evolution may have adapted to life in the water, developing traits like subcutaneous fat, breath control, and even partial webbing between fingers and toes. Mainstream science largely rejects it, but here's the strange part. People in remote coastal areas from Indonesia to Mozambique describe sightings of humanoid creatures with those exact features. Webbed hands, smooth hairless bodies, exceptional swimming speed. Could these be descendants of a lost evolutionary branch? Some anthropologists aren't laughing anymore, especially after scuba divers found handprints in underwater caves far deeper than any known human could reach without modern gear. In 1830s Louisiana, newspapers ran with a bizarre story. A fishwoman had been spotted multiple times along the banks of the Mississippi River near Baton Rouge. Witnesses described a creature with long black hair, pale skin, and fish-like lower limbs. The sightings caused panic, people refused to bathe or fish in the river, and boat captains rerouted cargo trips. What's wild is that these stories didn't go away. In 1842, a letter to the editor in the New Orleans Bee referenced an aquatic woman with haunting eyes spotted again, and even blamed her for a sunken steamboat. While no physical evidence ever surfaced, the consistency and fear surrounding these sightings make them stand out among American mermaid lore. In 2021, a team of researchers studying glacial melt near Greenland dropped a deep-sea camera into a subglacial cave. What they captured shocked them. A figure, upright, bipedal, but unmistakably aquatic. This creature hovered in the background for several seconds before darting away. The footage was dismissed by officials as, quote, distorted data, but the researchers who collected it told a different story in private. According to them, they reviewed the raw footage frame by frame and watched as the figure turned its head toward the camera, revealing wide-set eyes and thin gill slits. They called them shadow divers, beings that exist on the edge of where life should be possible. And if you ask them off the record, they'll say that we are not alone down there. It sounds like something out of a horror film, but in March 2025, beachgoers in Kent, England found a bizarre, washed-up object and at first thought it might be a mermaid's remains. They described it as a carved wooden creature with the tail of a fish and the torso and head of an alien-like creature. Paula Reagan, who took the photos, said, quote, the head looked skeletal, but the back part, where the fishtail was soft and squidgy. Imagine that. A freaky fishtail thing staring back at you. Local police eventually determined it wasn't a real creature at all, but a carved figurehead or sculpture. In fact, it closely resembled images of P.T. Barnum's infamous 19th century Fiji mermaid hoax, a half-monkey, half-fish mummified oddity. In other words, it was art, not animal, but it is a perfect example of how our minds can play tricks. A bit of driftwood and carved wood looked exactly like a mermaid skeleton. So the lesson, sometimes mermaid bones are just human-made curiosities masquerading as legend. Picture this. For decades, a small, blackened mermaid figure sat unnoticed in a Shinto temple in Japan, freakish and mysterious. Scientists finally took a close look in 2022 and were stunned by what they found. CT scans showed that the tiny mermaid, only about 30 centimeters long, wasn't a strange new animal at all, but a creepy doll made of paper, cloth, and fish parts. According to news reports, the creature, quote, looks like a monkey-mermaid hybrid. Fuzzy head, little arms, a fishy tail, but under the skin there's no skeleton. In fact, the body is mostly stuffed cloth, the face has no bones, and the tail contains fish scales. One researcher said there's no fish skeleton at all inside. Radiocarbon dating even showed it was crafted around the late 1800s. Why would anyone do this? In Edo period Japan, the legend of the Ningyo was very popular. The theory is that this mermaid was created as a talisman or curiosity to attract pilgrims or bring good luck during a smallpox outbreak. In short, it was an elaborate hoax not a new sea creature, but it does make for a spooky story. Priests treated it like a sacred relic for generations, never guessing their mermaid was a stitched together doll of fish parts and paper. If you hear about someone finding a spiral horn on the beach, you might think unicorn, or perhaps mermaid unicorn. In fact, the long sword-like tusk of a narwhal has inspired exactly those myths. In medieval Europe, before narwhals were well known, wealthy rulers bought narwhal tusks thinking they were unicorn horns with magical powers. Princes' cups were carved from them, queens drank from them to purify water, and people definitely didn't think they came from whales. In one museum, the Cloisters in New York, an 80-inch tusk is labeled as a unicorn horn even as recently as the 17th and 18th centuries. In some seafaring legends, these ivory spirals were also called horns of the sea or linked to merpeople. So a narwhal tusk could be called a mermaid's horn in the right folklore, but it's really just the tooth of a deep-sea whale. This real artifact turned myth just shows how an ordinary sea creature can spawn wild mermaid or unicorn stories. Have you ever picked up a little black pouch on the sand and wondered if it was a mermaid's treasure? Those little leathery cases are actually called mermaid's purses, but sadly they aren't filled with pearls or coins or forks. They are shark and skate egg cases, the embryos of baby sharks or rays developing safely inside. Scientists explain that some skates and sharks don't give live birth, but instead they lay eggs sealed in these pouch-like cases. To early beachcombers, a mermaid's purse just looked like something a mermaid might carry. A conservation group notes some people believe they were purses or bags for the treasures belonging to a mermaid, but in reality, if you open one up carefully after it's hatched, of course, you'd find a tiny shark pup. So next time you see a mermaid's purse tangled in seaweed, remember it's a gift from a shark mom, not a mermaid, and it might just be best to leave it alone. One of the creepiest places you might find a mermaid is in a church, but that's exactly what happened in Cornwall, England. In the 14th century, a choir boy in Zennor disappeared, and the local legend says a mermaid lured him away. The church still has a hand-carved wooden pew end showing a mermaid with a fishtail, so worshippers literally sat next to a mermaid carving every single Sunday. This is the only medieval church bench end in England known to depict a mermaid, and the carving was likely inspired by this legend. Today you can still see her in the church pew. It is a fascinating blend of faith and folklore, a real wooden artifact commemorating a local mermaid myth. In 1493, Christopher Columbus wrote in his logbook that he saw 3 mermaids off the coast of Haiti. He was disappointed to find that they were not as beautiful as he expected. They looked like 3 men in the sea. But here's the twist. Almost certainly those mermaids were not mythical sirens at all, but manatees. The Smithsonian's Ocean blog explains that Columbus's mermaids were probably the first recorded sightings of manatees, also referred to as sea cows. Manatees are big, chubby, and have round faces, not like a Hollywood mermaid, but from a distance a tired sailor might convince himself they were human-like. Scientists point out that the order name for manatees is Sirenia, from sirens, because mariners long ago thought these gentle mammals were mermaid relatives.
Back in 2012, Zimbabwe ran into a strange problem at a couple of dam sites. Workers were so scared of mermaids that they just straight up abandoned their posts. Water Resources Minister Sam Sepepa Nkomo explained the situation during a Senate meeting, saying that workers believed mermaids were living in the reservoirs and pulling people underwater. They were so freaked out that they refused to come back. And hey, fair enough. Doesn't sound worth it to me either. There are plenty of jobs that don't involve getting dragged underwater and drowned by mythical creatures. To try and fix the issue though, the government brought in traditional chiefs to perform rituals to get rid of these mermaids. Nkomo said these ceremonies were done to, quote, exorcise mermaids believed to inhabit reservoirs. Now, thinking the problem might just be some local superstition, Nkomo also tried hiring foreign workers, figuring they wouldn't buy into the stories, but even those workers ended up reporting weird sightings and refused to continue the job. Some people, including Nkomo himself, wondered if dangerous water currents might have been to blame here instead of anything supernatural. But whatever the case, the government went ahead with the traditional rituals to calm everyone down, get work moving again. So I have no idea what really went on here, but what a bizarre story. Now, just what exactly is this sound? It was recorded by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, in 1991, and to this day nobody knows what it is, so I mean it's gotta be mermaids, right? The upsweep is one of those deep-sea mysteries that scientists still haven't been able to fully explain. What's cool is that unlike other weird ocean sounds that were only picked up once, the upsweep's been recorded every year since 1991. It seems to follow a seasonal pattern, getting louder during certain times of the year and then fading. But even after decades of listening, no one's been able to figure out exactly where it's coming from. Some researchers think it could be connected to volcanic activity deep under the ocean, but some others wonder if the sound might actually be coming from some unknown sea creature we haven't discovered yet. We always hear vague stories about mermaid sightings way back in the day, but do we have any specific accounts? Well, yes, quite a bit actually. In 1603, for example, a farmer named Thomas Reynolds saw what looked like a mermaid in the water off the coast of Wales near Pendine. He called over other people and together they watched the creature for about 3 hours. According to their description, the creature was partly human with the upper body of a woman, but from the waist down it looked like a fish. A man named William Saunders, another local, took the time to carefully examine what Reynolds and the other witnesses had seen. He listened to their stories and found their accounts believable enough to document everything. In fact, the sighting was taken seriously enough that in 1604, just a year later, the story showed up in the paper, along with an illustration to show what they described. The mermaid was recorded as a, quote, monstrous fish that appeared in the form of a woman from her waist upward. A guy in South Africa claimed to have spotted a mermaid-like creature in 2008 in the small village of Surbrak. A man named Daniel Cupido and his mother Dina were near the river around 11:30 at night when they heard a loud banging noise. Cupido said it sounded like someone bashing on a wall. So he went to check it out, and when he got closer, Cupido said he saw something strange thrashing. He described the figure as looking like a, quote, white woman with long black hair thrashing about in the water. Concerned, he tried to help, but as he approached, the creature let out this strange sound that his mother said was so sorrowful her heart couldn't take it anymore. Some believe that what they saw that night may have been what's called a cayman, and I don't mean like cayman like the alligator type animal. The cayman is said to be a half-human, half-fish creature that lives in deep river pools. Surbrak tourism officer Maggie Gentry supported the group's story too, saying she personally knew the witnesses and made it clear that they were not people who drank heavily or made up stories. She said she trusted their word and believed that they genuinely saw something that night. Between 1887 and 1913, people along the coast of Deerness and the Orkney Islands kept spotting something strange in the water. Dozens of people, farmers, fishermen, and tourists, reported seeing the same thing over and over. The creature became known as the Deerness mermaid. One witness described it like this: it is about 6 to 7 feet in length, has a little black head with neck, a snow-white body and 2 arms, and in swimming, it just appears like a human being. At times it will appear to be siding on a sunken rock and will wave and work its hands. Sightings like this became so frequent in the summer that it pretty much became a part of the local culture. People even wrote plays about it. And then in 1913, off the southeastern coast of Hawaii, another group had their own run-in with something that matched the same description. A fisherman named Ralph Taylor and his crew saw what they thought was a mermaid while checking their lobster pots. Taylor described the account as follows: it rose out of the water to the height of 3 feet and looked like a lady with a shawl around her shoulders and streaming down her face. The ningen is a mysterious sea creature that people in Japan have reported seeing over the last several years, and it sounds a little bit like a mermaid. Not the beautiful mermaid we all think of, but a mermaid-like creature. Ningen is said to live in the icy waters of the Antarctic and is described as completely white, human-shaped, and can grow up to 20 to 30 meters long. Witnesses say the creature sometimes has arms, legs, 5-fingered hands, fins, tails. One sighting came from a whale research ship. At first, the crew thought they were looking at a foreign submarine, but when they got closer, realized what they were actually looking at was a living creature, which quickly disappeared back under the water. In November of 2007, MU magazine published a Google Earth screenshot that seemed to capture the ningen in the South Atlantic Ocean. There have been rumors that the Japanese government keeps detailed records of ningen sightings, but hasn't made any of them public.
In 2005, a team of commercial divers working off the coast of Baranof Island in Alaska reportedly encountered something terrifying while performing maintenance on deep-sea pipeline. According to a declassified safety report from the contractor, 2 divers surfaced early, shaken and refusing to go back down. One claimed he saw a quote, human face with gills staring at him from a crevice in a rock. They described the creature as having webbed hands, reflective eyes, and scales that shimmered in their flashlight beams. Locals weren't surprised. In fact, some Inuit legends speak of sea people who dwell near that exact region. They even have a name, the Kalupalik, mermaid-like beings that lure people underwater with a hum you can only hear when submerged. High up on the windswept cliffs of the Faroe Islands, a remote chain in the North Atlantic, there is a cave that few people dare enter. Inside are carvings, ancient ones, etched into the rock. They clearly depict human-fish hybrids drawn with long hair, webbed hands, and tails. According to local historians, these markings predate Christian influence in the area and may have been created by Norse explorers. But here's the twist. One panel shows what appears to be a mermaid holding a dead man's head. Creepy? Absolutely. But archaeologists can't deny the authenticity, and some believe the site was a ritual space used to ask protection from sea spirits during voyages. These weren't just artistic depictions, they were warnings. In 2013, an offshore oil rig operating in the Gulf of Mexico experienced a strange sonar reading. Something large, fast, and warm-blooded was circling the base of the platform. Assuming it was a shark, divers went to inspect the structure, but returned reporting, quote, something strange watching us from the shadows. One diver swore he saw a pale-skinned human-like figure swimming against the current with almost no effort. He said it had no breathing apparatus, yet it was moving at least 60 feet down. Internal emails from the rig, later leaked online, referred to it as, quote, the mermaid incident. No formal statement was ever released, and the crew involved were reassigned shortly after. Most people think of the Fiji mermaid as a 19th century hoax, an ugly little thing that turned out to be a monkey sewn to a fish. But here's what most people don't know. There were dozens of reports of similar creatures in the South Pacific long before it became a circus attraction. Fishermen from the islands have passed down stories for generations of a creature with glowing eyes and silver fins that comes to surface during storms. Some researchers believe the quote original Fiji mermaid shown by P.T. Barnum may have been a poorly preserved copy of something real because other specimens that looked nearly identical were reportedly destroyed by British colonists trying to quote clean up native beliefs. In 1978, a geologist hiking near Iceland stumbled across a strange fossil embedded in a rock wall. It looked like a partial skeleton, with a humanoid ribcage, scaled lower limbs, and elongated finger bones. He turned it over to the University of Iceland for study, and then it vanished. To this day, only photographs remain. Some experts suggested it was a hoax or misidentified fish bones, but the proportions didn't match any known marine species. What's stranger is that mermaid sightings are extremely common in Icelandic folklore, especially in that region. Locals believe that fossil was proof of an evil sea witch believed to lure sailors into whirlpools and drown them. During the Cold War, Soviet submarines patrolling near the Sea of Japan recorded something bizarre on their sonar. What sounded like high-pitched singing, followed by multiple fast-moving underwater objects surrounding their vessel. At first, the crew believed believed it was a foreign sub, but no signatures matched known technology. One sonar technician described the singing as, quote, almost human, but not quite. Years later, after the fall of the USSR, some of these logs were leaked to independent researchers. Many now believe the Soviets may have encountered the same mysterious beings that Pacific Island cultures describe as sea sisters, a group of female spirits or creatures who travel in pods, warning or punishing those who disturb the ocean. In some parts of Asia, the animals that inspired mermaid legends were actually dugongs, close relatives of manatees. These plump, flippered sea cows were sometimes called mermaids or spirit women of the sea, but a shocking 2022 study revealed that they are now functionally extinct in Chinese waters. Researchers interviewed fishermen and found no confirmed sightings in decades. None after 2000, actually. Old records showed plenty of dugongs and mermaids in old tales around 1960, but their numbers crashed rapidly. In short, China's mermaids have literally disappeared. This sobering fact connects back to our theme. Many mermaid myths arose when people saw strange marine mammals briefly and imagined something magical. Now science is protecting the memory of those real creatures. It is a reminder that the real ocean is changing, and sometimes, sadly, mermaid-like animals vanish entirely. Mermaid artifacts aren't only old fossils, some are part of living traditions. In West and Central Africa and even the Caribbean, many people worship a water spirit called Mami wada, literally mother water. She is often depicted as a beautiful mermaid-like woman with flowing hair, sometimes holding a snake. At the Smithsonian's National Museum of African Art, an altar to her was set up in an exhibit. Even though it was just a display, visitors started treating it like a real shrine. People left coins, jewelry charms, a hairbrush, even a little toy guitar on the altar as offerings. It is a fascinating mix of art and folklore, showing that the idea of mermaids isn't just made up, it can be an active part of culture today. Archaeologists sometimes unearth the ancient influence of mermaid myths in very surprising places. In Amasra, Turkey, an excavation in 2023 uncovered a large 2nd century AD marble statue of a half-naked female figure resting on an urn. The experts believe she's a water nymph or sea spirit from Roman times. In Roman myth, there were divinities of the sea and fresh water, essentially ancient mermaid-like creatures. This statue is about 1.5 meters tall and was part of a gymnasium complex. The woman is, quote, wearing a cloak over the lower regions and leaning on an urn, which likely means that she is a nymph of water. It is a beautiful real artifact showing how the Romans blended gods and mermaid imagery. So in Turkey today, we have a 1,800-year-old sculpture of a mermaid sea goddess. Even deep in Papua, island lore hides mermaids. Archaeologists working around Lake Sentani found ancient wood carvings on the support pillars of a traditional tribal house showing mermaid motifs. This discovery was reported in 2020. The carved figure depicts a beautiful woman with long flowing hair and a fish tail. Local legend says the Sentani people's ancestors came from the Pacific Ocean, so a mermaid carving makes symbolic sense. The archaeologists say this new data gives insight into the tribe's origins, and in other words, the mermaid carving is part of their creation story. This carved mermaid is a real artifact showing how mermaid images can be woven into a culture's history.